Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another LFG Live. Actually, just got down to my desk. Our daughter Samaria is actually coming home today. Lauren is on her way home. My amazing wife Lauren is on her way home right now, picking her up. She finished her first year, freshman year, at Temple University in Philadelphia. We couldn't be more proud moms, but she's on her way home now. So, of course, I was upstairs cooking all of her favorite things to make sure that she is ready, feels welcome. Because, look, it's a big transition, right? They're happy to be home. These kids are happy to be home, but they just spent a year on their own. And I'm sure, a little home comforts and a little home welcome will be good for her. So, we're excited for it. But today, we are talking about reading your P&L like a CEO. But first, of course, even though I was very busy today, I did not forget. What am I drinking today? Just a regular tea, a little maple espresso from Trader Joe's. Something simple to get us ready for our call today. So excited to jump into this one. Again, I am Daria. I am the CEO and founder of LeMay Fusion Group. We are kicking off a brand new month. Last month, we went over processes and operations. Of course, all those videos are on my YouTube channel or on my website. This month, we are talking about financial health. Today is reading your P&L like a CEO. When we talk about this too, team, I talk to a lot of companies about their P&L. And what I find a lot of the times, especially since I work with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, the people operating these businesses are usually the owner, are usually the founder of that business, or at least they're very connected to the business. And they don't really look at a P&L like a business document. They look at it like a financial document only, meaning just an accountant needs to look at this, or I just need to look at this for my tax purposes. And note that I didn't say we're going to look at your P&L like an accountant. Very different conversation. I want to make it clear. This is not financial advice. This is not tax advice. This is not advice on, any of that kind of stuff. I'm not an accountant. I am not a tax advisor. I'm a business person who knows how to use a P&L to help drive behaviors and drive decision-making in our business, not to do our taxes. That is not me. That is not the stuff I enjoy doing at all. I like to use the data to drive behaviors and drive the business. So again, usually when I'm talking to businesses, people aren't using the P&L like they should because they view it that way, that it's just an end of the month or end of the quarter or end of the year document. And really, it's our scorecard throughout the month. And what happens is that comfortability happens with these small and medium businesses like yours, where you're the one doing the purchasing, or at least overseeing the purchasing, or you're in the mix of it all. And yeah, it's the same thing all the time. And meanwhile, we don't notice when maybe that cost of goods went up a little bit, or maybe there was a 10% increase in one of the things that we have to purchase for our clients consistently, but we can go to a different vendor and it can be different. So there's so many things that we need to look at, even when we feel like we are comfortable with the cost that we have. The other is labor costs. Of course my guys are working. Yeah, they're working. They're here. That's what they do. If we're not looking at the labor costs, they can get really out of control really quickly. So again, we're going to talk about P&L, how to look at it to drive your business, not at end of the year, but throughout the day-to-day, throughout the months. So first is, what is a P&L? What is it not? So what it is, a profit and loss statement is an income statement. It is a snapshot of your financial performance over a period. That period traditionally could be a month. I prefer to look at it a little more frequently when I can, even though it might not be completely buttoned up because we have some expenses and labor and things like that, but we can do a little forecasting. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But it'll show your revenue. It'll show your costs, including your cost of goods, your labor costs, and then what's left at the end of it all. What it's not is a cash on hand report. That's a cash flow statement. And I believe, let me double check my calendar. Yes, next week, May 8th, we're actually talking about cash flow versus profit. They are very different things. When we look at a P&L, we're going to look at the three different sections traditionally, and that is the revenue / income, however you want to look at that. Cost of goods sold, or the cost of our services. And then the third is our operating expenses. The rest of it is our net profit. That's what's left. That's not always where the real story lives. We don't want to just look at that net profit. It's all that fun stuff in the middle that helps us make decisions to make great impact and great change in our business to make sure that we're thriving. So I want to make sure that when we're talking about this, there are going to be things that you already know, and you're going to go, duh, Daria, why are we even going over this? I get it, but I have to go under the assumption on these chats that maybe there are some folks that have never even looked at a P&L. Maybe they don't even have one. I talked to a very new but thriving home services business recently, and I asked them what is kind of their biggest struggle, and they said exactly this. It's, when I was small, it was just me. It was easy to know kind of what I was spending every day and what I wasn't spending and what I was coming home with at the end. But now I have another truck and I have another employee. It gets a little more challenging. So this was his actual struggle, how to use something like a P&L to help drive those business. So a P&L, again, is going to tell you a story over a period of time. When some people look at this, they look at the P&L throughout the year. Sometimes people through 3 months, sometimes people 1 month. And again, like I said before, I like to look at it a little more frequently than 1 month, even though I understand that it's not going to be a full month snapshot. But what we want to make sure that we're looking at while we're looking at these are the specific numbers that we can impact. And what do I mean by that? There's going to be a gross profit margin on our cost of goods sold. I know that I talk to a lot of different industries here, and there's not going to be a cookie cutter approach to this. There's not going to be, hey, your cost of goods should be 20%, 30%. I can't say that here. I can say that on our one-on-ones and what your industry standard kind of looks like. But we still have to look at it. Revenue minus cost of goods as a percentage. That gives us our gross profit margin. That is a huge number that we have to look at. That is our starting point for everything. Because imagine in a crazy world that it's 100%, that you're buying a product for $5 and selling it for $5. That product is costing you money because you're not looking at overhead. You're not looking at labor. You're not looking at all the other things. Not going to assume anybody on this call is doing that, but that's that starting point. That's what we want to look at. Where is our gross profit margin? Another is our operating expense ratio. What is your OPEX? How much of every dollar that you're earning has to go back out to keep the lights on, to keep your internet on, to keep your phones on? And in a lot of small businesses, that's that cost that keeps climbing up. You know, I talked about when I was starting LeMay Fusion Group a couple weeks back, and you know, I used the free trials of everything for a little bit to make sure that I was keeping a close eye on all of those operating expenses, my financial system, my point of sale system. Everything was kind of the free one user for a bit until I was able to move it up. But you have to look at those operating expenses to see how much does it even cost us to run this business. And as you grow, they get bigger and bigger because you need more of an infrastructure. And then your revenue concentration is another big one. Where is your revenue actually coming from? When I look at the revenue, I worked with a company about a year ago, started working with them. Amazing, successful company here local in New Jersey. And one of the first things I looked at was how much profit margin or how much revenue was coming from one client, their biggest client. Now, I loved that one biggest client. That's fantastic. They're making a ton of money off of that one client. But what I had to make sure is if that one client canceled the contract, they said, you know what, we're not going to renew. And of course, we're going to do everything in our power to not let that happen. But let's say that one client didn't want to renew. Where are we? Well, do we still have a sustainable business? I almost have to look at it as two different businesses to really make sure that we can thrive and be successful. But if your revenue concentration is coming from one client or just one service, your P&L should be flagged for that. Not as a, this is bad, but as a, hey, we want to watch out for this. Then another point on this is we want to do kind of a line item auditing. We call it line item scrutiny. And that is if you can't provide an explanation for the line item on your P&L in one sentence, that's an issue. Your P&L should be a document that you understand, that when you look at it, you know what it is. Not one that you just throw things on, you kind of forget what it is, you don't really know what it's all about. This should be a living, breathing document that helps you make choices and help make decisions for your business. So it should be something that you can explain every time. So again, we want to make sure we understand our profit, understand our cost of goods and the ratio to our profit, understand our OPEX, our operating expenses, understand where our revenue is coming from, what products, what service, what clients. And again, making sure that every item on that P&L makes sense. It allows us to change behavior. So when your accountant, your bookkeeper, whoever gives you that P&L, hopefully weekly if there's an estimate, but at least monthly. If you don't know one of the line items on there, make sure you're asking because that's the only way you're going to be able to look at the behaviors. Now we've kind of talked about what a P&L is. Let's jump into now how to read it. What do you do with this now that you have it? And I'll admit, looking back years and years and years ago, this is my least favorite part of the business because I thought I had to be an accountant mind to understand it. So I hated it because I didn't understand it. If I'm going to be very kind of transparent on that. I didn't get it. I didn't know how to read it like a CEO. I thought that I had to read it like an accountant, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be an accountant. I love HR. I love sales. I love operations. But once I realized that I can look at it like a CEO, I learned to embrace it and learn that data helps me drive behaviors in my business. So how do we look at it now like a CEO? Not like an accountant making those decisions on where the line items go and what class it goes to. I don't care about any of that. I care about this. How do we read it like a CEO to make decisions? So one of the things I do, and if you have access to your QuickBooks or Wave or whatever you use, Xero, all these other platforms. If you can pull it, great. If not, ask the person who's sending you your P&L to not only send the 1 month, but send 3 to 6 months side by side every month. So every month that you're looking at it, you should be looking at this month plus the 3 to 6 months behind. The reason why is a single month can kind of lie to you. A single month that has a spike somewhere, maybe a utility bill went up, or maybe you had a ridiculous big sale that normally doesn't happen. You can't forecast on that 1 month because there might be an anomaly in there. Patterns tell the truth of your business, though. So you want to look at it from a 3 to 6 month snapshot. Even though you're looking at that particular month, also look at it through the 3 to 6 month snapshot behind to see what outliers we have. I usually actually export mine into Excel, and I do a quick calculation on the side of what percentage things went up and down. I highlight the big percentages first, the biggest swings first, and that's where I focus. So also comparing to your expectations. What did you plan to happen and what actually happened? That goes for sales. That goes for your revenue number. That goes for your expense number. Well, I expected labor to be around X percent of my total revenue. I expected it to be X dollar amount, but it wasn't. It was higher or lower. Why? Sometimes you'll have an easy explanation for it, right? Sometimes in landscaping, for example, maybe we had a month where the labor was low. Revenue was probably low too because maybe it rained a ton and we didn't get out to be able to do things at people's homes. I get it. But that gap is what we need to look at to make sure we can identify it. And if we can't quickly identify it, we need to research it. So the next step of that, of course, flagging those anomalies quickly. When you're looking at something month over month or in that 3 month snapshot, something that doubles month over month, not an accounting issue. That's a business issue. That's a choice we're making issue. We need to figure that out. Now, I will put a little asterisk there, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, but certainly you can have, if you're renting a building, you can have a CAM charge that came through. You can have some kind of anomaly that came through, and I get that. But generally speaking, it's a business issue. If we have those numbers doubling or things just aren't looking right, make sure we're looking at that quickly. Do this exercise monthly. Do not wait to do it quarterly. If you're doing it quarterly, you're in the rear, you're looking behind you going, oh, shoot, what happened? Too far back to make differences today, right? So if we find out that our labor rates are absolutely insane, or this happened actually in one of our T-Mobile stores, the toilet was broken and our water bill was quadrupled, and we didn't know it, until we looked at it down the road. And that kind of taught us a lesson of making sure we're looking at these things a heck of a lot more quickly, but make sure we're doing it as frequently as possible. And I know you might be saying, how do we do a P&L more than monthly if we're waiting for bills and expenses and things like that to come in? The true P&L can only be done monthly. But that doesn't mean you can't do a modified. Work with your accounting team or your finance team. That doesn't mean you can't do a modified projected or forecasted expense using where we are so far in the month and then some loose numbers on where we think we might be. Now, they're not going to be perfect, but we can get pretty darn close if we're actually keeping tabs on our expenses and all that kind of stuff. Okay. And then once you look at all that, what's the big question that pops up when you're looking at it? I don't have that answer. We'd have to do an actual activity to do that. But when you're looking at it all, where do you go, why does that number look like that? Or why is that way? Or why is that percentage off base? That's how we as CEOs and leaders of our business get to dig in then. That's where we know how to fix stuff. So again, going back to the way beginning of our conversation, you're an owner operator or you're very close to your business. You have all this stuff living in your head and every day is going by and day-to-day is going by. You may not notice these little 10%, 15%, even 20% increases in, let's say, your cost of goods, for example. Looking at your P&L will help you isolate those. Looking at your P&L will help you pull those out and go, wait a minute, why is Bob charging me XYZ? I actually had in one of the companies I worked for about 2 years ago, we found out through this exercise that they were charging us credit card fees even though we were on terms. So that extra percentage or whatever it was, we're like, wait a minute, why this math doesn't add up? What's happening? And they switched something in their billing system and they were actually charging us as if we were paying credit card even though we had terms. Probably wouldn't have noticed that because we're spending tens of thousands of dollars on this product, but it still worked out to be thousands of dollars a year in savings by us calling that out in money we shouldn't have had to spend. So make sure when we're looking at these P&Ls, you're able to pull out a question. What can we fix? Right? And without doing this, it becomes really challenging to truly run your business in a profitable way. And if we're talking about scaling, we're talking about growing the business, it becomes very challenging if we're not looking at that P&L. It is your report card. It is your accountability to yourself, is your accountability to your teams to make sure that you're operating a profitable business. And what that goal and profit is going to vary. There's going to be months where you're like, shoot, we're building, we're growing, or it's a traditionally rough month because of weather or whatever it is, especially in our home service businesses. Maybe that goal is zero for the net profit that month. I hope not, but we never want it to be less than zero. So when we're looking at those forecasts, and that's the other part of the P&L, you want to try to forecast it every month and knowing where your numbers should be so that you can compare it to your actual P&L to see where you fell short, and that's how you can work on fixing it going forward. But you want to make sure that your forecast is profitable, is in the green. Then we're comparing it to see where we might have missed or even where we over succeeded, and then we can celebrate with the teams. So, all right, guys, talked a lot about our P&Ls today. There's a lot more to talk about this month as far as finances. We're going to do cash flow next month, the 15th, pricing for sustainability, the 22nd, labor costs, the 29th, I'm kind of keeping it open for now. I want to see what pops up. But it happens to be a rare month where I have 5 Fridays, so haven't really planned out what the 29th is, but I'm sure we'll come up with something, maybe balance sheets or other financial reporting. Depends what some of our clients and friends ask us for the end of the month. But I do want to make sure I call out this month. It is Military Appreciation Month. I am blessed and happy to have a ton of folks, including my father, my friend Chuck, and my wife calling me. And I forgot to silence my phone. My apologies. But I do have a lot of friends, family, folks out there that are former military, current military. So happy Military Appreciation Month. But why do I bring this up now? Think about how the military runs. They run on systems. They run on protocols. They run on operational readiness. You don't go into a mission without a complete picture of where you want to be, where you want to go, your assets, your liabilities, your risk exposure, contingency plan should things not work your way. Think about your business like that. Knowing your numbers, knowing the data going into it, just like the military, is going to help you be successful. It is going to be considered operationally acceptable and thriving should we do things like that. So again, understanding your P&L, not just a financial exercise, just like the military, it is operational readiness. It is knowing your position before you make your next move. It is giving you the ability to plan what your next month, what your next quarter might look like. All right. So let's wrap this up today. 3 things I want everyone to take away from this when we talk about our P&L and reading it like a CEO. 1, your P&L is a decision-making tool, not a filing obligation that is just the responsibility of your accounting department. It is part of how to drive the business. If you're not doing that, start doing it that way today. 2, your net profit number on the bottom is not where the story lives. You can't change that number without looking at everything else inside, your gross margin, your operating expense ratio, your revenue concentration. Those are the numbers that are really telling you what's going to happen, and those are the numbers you can change. 3, pull your last 3 months side by side this weekend. Just do it. Pick one number that surprises you when you look at things month over month. Ask why that's happening. Once you create that habit every month of doing that, that changes everything in your business. So, of course, as always, if you need my help, want my help, I'm always here for you. When it comes to the financial side of business, I actually have a few other folks that I bring in as experts too, depending on what you need. But have a great team of folks here at LeMay Fusion Group to help you through whatever you need to financially support your business. But until then, everybody, take a deep breath, finish your drink, and go lead with intention today. Thanks so much, everyone.